Yeah, I'm ranking the bombs next. To my surprise, there were multiple people who asked me to make the bombs list next, which is kind of funny because I originally planned on making the swords list first, and then just decided to start working on the guns one for some reason. Ranking all 21 bombs and sparlates from worst to best. And yes, there are that many of them. This may be a surprise for some of you, as the only one that the general player base likes to acknowledge is that one. Bombs and sparlates are far more divisive compared to the other two weapon types. The lack of light attack makes it difficult to fit bombs into most loadouts, and the lack of good bombing gear makes it unfavorable in the early to mid game. In general, bombs specialize in AoE, but some offer good utility, such as inflicting status effects or grouping enemies together, which makes it really difficult to rank them into an individual list. Some bombs are best used alone, dealing constant damage over time, while others rely on different weapons to deal damage. That being said, I still try to rank each bomb based on how good it is generally, but some of these weapons are so situational, your loadout and your playstyle can drastically change how effective some bombs are in certain situations. Honestly, you could argue a valid point for just about any spot on this list to be higher or lower. Number 21, Deadly Shard Bomb. Okay, never mind, I don't think there's any competition for another bomb to be in this spot. I crafted these weapons with an open mind, thinking perhaps I'm missing something. Maybe there's some hidden tactic or obscure playstyle that everyone's been overlooking for years, only to be met with one of the most disappointing weapon classes this game has to offer. Shard bombs are just so bad. The blast radius on the bomb and the crystals are way too small. The damage is very okay if you have everything maxed out. Damage max, level 10, good charge time reduction, and even then you have to force this weapon class to work. If you place it too close to a wall, half of the crystals just won't appear. The crystals deal way too much knockback, which ends up pushing enemies out of range of your other bombs, and when enemies do get knocked back, they seem to be pushed in completely random directions. It could be towards your next bomb, away from your next bomb, or directly into you if you're lucky. These bombs could have served as decent DPS weapons, but just about everything is preventing that from being the case. Needless to say, these flaws apply to every shard bomb. I mainly wanted to highlight how much worse the normal damage one is compared to the rest of them. I like the idea of normal damage in this game, and I actually have a few ideas on how the system could have been improved. But in the current state of the game, normal damage weapons are just inferior to those with elemental effects, with the exception of a few weapons, but they're exactly that. Exceptions. If you take a step back and look at the roster of normal damage weapons, you'll be just as disappointed as I am. All that Deadly Shard Bomb does is take up space in the game's files. Just all of them. Every other one, except for Shocking Salt Bomb. I'll talk about Shocking Salt Bomb later. I have spent probably a week, collectively, writing and rewriting paragraphs, editing and reorganizing the entire first portion of this list. Every time I found some niche use or weird interaction with shard bombs. I originally tried ranking these not on how good each individual shard bomb was, but how effective shard bombs as a whole performed against certain monster families, which ended up making my opinion on these even more polarizing. From my experience, shard bombs perform pretty well against slimes, but they kinda suck if you're up against a bunch of gremlins. They're actually really effective against beasts, but I had a hard time dealing with fiends. And then constructs and undead were both kind of a double-edged sword. Scuttlebots and retrodes are punching bags as long as you're moving around, but the inconsistent and unpredictable knockback resulted in mechanites being pushed directly into me, several times. And for the undead side of things, zombies and scarabs went down pretty quickly with Deadly Crystal Bomb, but my god, spook cats and dreadnoughts are some of the most annoying enemies to fight if you're only using a shard bomb. Also, why is this literally our only damaging elemental bomb? Haze bombs and some vortex bomb do technically deal elemental damage, but those weapon types are more used for utility, and they suck when it comes to dealing damage directly. Iron Tech Destroyer and Heavy Deconstructor are perfect candidates for an elemental blast bomb, but nah, I guess we're stuck with 4 versions of what is essentially the same weapon. Number 16, Shocking Salt Bomb. The shock status redeems it slightly. I found it to be particularly helpful against constructs, but at the end of the day, it's still a shard bomb. Man, I wish these were good too. There are several things they could have done differently with these bombs to make them so much better. Larger explosions, more consistent crystal placements, faster charge time, less knockback would be a big one, and that's why Shocking Salt Bomb performs so much better than the rest of them. Shock as a status effect is far from consistent, but when Shock does proc on something, it usually lets you hit it 1 or 2 more times before the knockback becomes a hindrance. But above all else, Shocking Salt Bomb is the best Shard Bomb, because it creates controversy between your teammates about the properties of salt.
It spices things up, despite being made of salt.
But it makes everything sweet.
What?
Salt does not. It is not what salt does.
Have you tasted salted before though? It tastes sweet.
What? Oh.
I don't think your taste buds work.
What is salt supposed to taste like then?
Salty. I don't know what else. I wonder.
Yeah, what it's supposed to taste like? Fucking sweet salt. Salt is not a specific answer. Sweet or bitter is.
Or salty.
Salty,
you know, the
isn't?
description of salt.
But if you put it in your mouth, it tastes sweet.
It tastes salty.
Yes, but it also tastes sweet.
It simply is not the case. I don't know what to tell you.
This conversation is stupid as fuck.
I could not agree more. I want you to describe something that's salty.
I don't know what the fucking fact. The only thing I can think of salty is like fucking sweet. Have you tasted salt on pizza before?
Pizza? Why would you put it on your pizza? Okay, now I'm getting concerned why you're eating so much salt. What's going on?
Like, it just tastes too fucking sweet.
It's salty. It does not taste sweet, Shadow. I don't understand what you
There's
mean.
no other way to describe it.
Salty is not a description.
It is.
It is not a taste. That is a fucking.
What does a spoonful of sugar taste like?
I don't know. I've never had a spoonful of sugar, but it probably tastes disgusting.
Disgusting is not a
Weird.
flavor.
Exactly. Neither is salty.
Salty is a flavor.
It is.
How often do you just eat spoonfuls of salt? Is this a normal thing? I like how this entire conversation stemmed off of me using the shocking salt bomb. If I chose to use any other bomb, the conversation would have happened.
Yeah.
It could have been avoided.
Number 15, Big Angry Bomb. I like the idea, but the execution is, well, it's something else. Big Angry Bomb has enough force to level an entire building. And let me ask you, how many buildings are you usually against in Spiral Knights? 0. The answer is none. This amount of knockback is just unnecessary for literally any situation. The only time I've seen genuine use of this thing in late game content is when this guy brought it into his DFV run. And like, cool. It kinda worked. I can see the tech. But I'm gonna be honest here, looking back at that video with all the experience I've gained from these weapons, he would have been better off with any one of like 5 different bombs. And that brings me to my next point. Big Angry Bomb sucks at dealing damage. It absolutely does not excel at speed, but it is good at dealing knockback. And by good, I mean it deals way too much. This is one of the few weapons in this game that forces itself to be a utility weapon, because its ability to actually kill things is bottlenecked by its quite frankly absurd amount of knockback. Number 14, Stagger Storm. I've seen way too many people hating on Stagger Storm recently. Stun is probably the most overlooked status effect in the game, not only when it's inflicted onto enemies, but also the player. People seem to ignore just how potent this status effect can be sometimes. Now, on its own, Stagger Storm kinda sucks. If none of your other weapons have any form of AoE, then you probably won't get much mileage out of it. But if you're using Stagger Storm along with another Haze Bomb, or a weapon with good crowd control, the stun is almost always helpful. Players who say that it messes with their timing are sort of self-reporting their lack of experience with the stun status. The reduced attack speed can be a game changer under the right circumstances. I do, however, have to note the number of enemies that can just ignore this bomb. Like, half of the slime roster are just completely resistant to Stagger Storm, and I had the misfortune of finding this out the hard way. Number 13, Iron Tech Destroyer. The big brother of the Iron Tech bomb, the Destroyer unleashes the full potential of Iron Tech. That's just the item description. I'm just reading you the item description. Man, the full potential of Iron Tech power kinda blows. It deals normal damage, and it's slower than Nitronome, which is all you really need to know about this weapon. I'm not even sure what the purpose of this bomb is supposed to be. It's like the weird middle child between Nitronome and Big Angry Bomb. Nitronome excels at speed, being the fastest and least damaging of the blast bombs. Big Angry Bomb, being much slower, excels in high damage, while also dealing an absurd amount of knockback. Iron Tech Destroyer excels at none of these things. It's significantly slower than Metronome, while barely outdamaging it. Your movement speed is reduced, similar to how it is with Big Angry Bomb, and it just takes way too long to detonate sometimes. It can inflict stun, which is nice, I guess. It actually kind of helps out with the reduced speed, but that seems to be more of a coincidence than anything. I can give it a little credit because for an AoE weapon, it's not the worst thing you can use. It's just not very good either. Number 12, Torpor Tantrum. This is probably the most utility a utility weapon can be. Not only does sleep not deal any damage, but it actually heals monsters if you let it wear off. But in exchange, you get to essentially pause the entire flow of combat. The healing mechanic can be negated in a few different ways. Hitting monsters out of sleep early will cancel the healing effect. And likewise, damaging stats effects like fire and shock can also wake enemies up. In addition to that, inflicting poison will stop any healing effects, not just from sleep. Gone are the days of being swarmed by too many enemies at once. With Torpor Tantrum, you get to pick off individual monsters while the rest gaze from the distance, unable to do anything. When I said that you get to pause the entire flow of combat, I meant the entire flow of combat. With a whole crowd of enemies asleep, you give yourself an opportunity to heal, pick up items, charge up a weapon, do whatever you want really. One major drawback to this bomb is that enemies afflicted with sleep gain temporary resistance, which prevents you from reapplying the stats effect. Also the fact that constructs are just immune to sleep. An entire portion of this game's content can just ignore this bomb. I understand why, but like, you're able to put devices into sleep mode. I'm sure they could have figured something out. It wouldn't make any less sense than poisoning them, or stun for that matter. I mean, come on, it's a video game. Not everything has to make sense. Number 11. Graviton Vortex. Genuinely, where do I rank this? Should it be at the bottom of the list? Should I put it in the top 10? Is it number 1? This one weapon class is the main reason why ranking all the bombs into a single list was such a headache. Vortex bombs are only as good as the weapon you synergize it with. If none of your equipped weapons are good against groups, then you may as well not even use the Vortex, which makes this simultaneously the best and worst weapon class in the game. Other Vortex bombs have a slight chance of inflicting one of various stats effects, which also means a slight chance of being a disappointment when nothing happens after it explodes. Graviton Vortex is consistent. You know exactly what'll happen before and after the bomb explodes. And you know what? That's worth something. The stats effects on other Vortex bombs only apply after they explode. So if you knock enemies out of the Vortex, or outright kill them before it explodes, then it doesn't really matter which one you pick. Graviton Vortex is the worst Vortex bomb by far. There's no reason why you should craft this over Obsidian Crusher, but the worst Vortex bomb is still a Vortex bomb. After being indecisive for way too long, I eventually decided to just place it here, at number 11, the exact middle of the list. Number 10, Shiver Mist Buster. Freeze is nice. Shiver Mist Buster is constantly referred to as a newbie weapon, and although I don't disagree, that isn't to say that Shiv can't find its uses in more experienced playstyles. Being able to bring all enemy movement to a halt can be critical in a tight situation. It doesn't completely stop everything to the extent that Torpor Tantrum does. Frozen enemies are still able to attack, and Wolvers can still teleport around, but it's far more consistent. Constructs can be frozen, and enemies don't gain immunity after the freeze wears off, unlike the former bomb. If you're struggling against a group of oilers or toxic oils, for some reason, Shiver Mist Buster is your trump card, basically acting as a permanent debuff for them, so long as they don't keep reigniting themselves, that is. Even in regular gameplay, being able to stop nimble enemies from spazzing all over the place is just nice sometimes. And if you keep spamming the bomb, frozen enemies are completely stuck for the entire duration of the freeze, allowing you to deliver whatever punishment is coming for them. Constantly reapplying freeze can also negate all knockback effects, allowing you to reap the benefits of some knockback heavy weapons, such as caliber charge attacks. With all that being said, why is Shiver Mist Buster considered a beginner's weapon? Well, to put it simply, it's just not necessary most of the time. As you get further into SK's content, gameplay revolves more around dodging attacks and positioning enemies manually, either by using knockback from weapons, player movement to group enemies up themselves, or manipulating AI to bait out attacks. Having a movement prohibiting stats effect can actually end up being a hindrance, and in those situations, you're usually better off going with a different haze bomb, or a different weapon entirely. Number 9, Celestial Vortex. I keep scrolling past this part of the script, and I just don't know what to write here. It's a vortex bomb that can inflict fire. Yippee. It's one of 3 weapons that can inflict strong fire, which is really good actually. It can finish off stray monsters, or at the very least, it'll deal some significant damage on the side. Vortex bombs in general are just really good because they allow AoE weapons to excel in just about every level. Being able to reposition enemies together on demand allows weapons with AoE attacks to be effective in just about every situation in the game. Number 8. Venom Veiler. It's good. Like, really good. Poison actually has 3 effects. On top of reducing enemy defenses, it also reduces their attack damage, as well as preventing healing. The defense reduction from poison stacks with other defense reducing items, such as Seraphim's Disintegration Ray or Recon Flares, which can make even some of the normal damage weapons look impressive. The healing negation works with all sources of healing, not just Menders and Soakwings. Gremlins using health capsules, sleep wearing off, those weird healing totems that appear in like 2 levels, Jelly King, if you needed to kill him any faster for whatever reason. Quicksilvers and Oilers constantly healing from their stats effects. Any form of healing is just prevented with this stats effect. And don't overlook the damage reduction. Under the right circumstances, poison can reduce incoming damage by up to 50%. Although most of the time it's only like 20 to 30, but still. Enemy damage reduction will also work in tandem with other defense boosting abilities. Defense orbs, battle sprite abilities, anything that helps reduce the amount of damage you take adds up, and now you're able to take several more hits before going down. The difference might not be night and day, but you'd be surprised by how substantial it can be if you're wearing the right armor. And being able to inflict all of that with this large of a radius on a single weapon is teetering the line of being overpowered. Number 7. Obsidian Crusher. The previous section explained the benefits of inflicting minor poison, the weakest form of poison. Obsidian Crusher is the only bomb capable of applying strong poison, so imagine all of that if it was just stronger. Obviously, Venom Veiler is better at inflicting poison onto a large group of monsters, it being a haze bomb and whatnot, but Obsidian Crusher grants you just about all of those benefits while also functioning as a vortex bomb. Having a weapon that's able to inflict this strong of a stats effect while also being this influential during combat is just, could you even ask for a better utility weapon? Obsidian Crusher kind of synergizes with itself. You can place down one to apply poison and then immediately place down another to deal damage to a crowd of poison enemies. Number 6. Voltaic Tempest. There are exactly 2 weapons in Spiral Knights where I can say with confidence that the innate shock status is genuinely beneficial, and coincidentally, they're both bombs. Voltage gets brownie points for being very consistent at inflicting shock, but I'm gonna be honest here, I haven't encountered a single situation where Voltage doesn't get outclassed by Combustor. Shocking Salt Bomb is also worth considering, but Shard Bombs have way too many problems for a stats effect to be able to fix. Every other shock weapon in the game is a weapon first and then can inflict shock, kind of as an add-on. Voltaic Tempest's purpose is to inflict shock, and as it turns out, it's the best at it. Something I've learned through the process of making this video is that we've been using this bomb the wrong way for years. Enemies caught inside the lingering haze will have shock reapplied to them. By placing down multiple Voltaic Tempests, you can shock enemies in rapid succession, which will stagger them significantly faster than it normally does. Here's how to best utilize this. Place down 3 or more Voltaic Tempests. Try to overlap them as much as you can. Don't spread them across the entire room. Place them as close to each other as you can. Any enemy caught inside the haze cannot move and cannot be knocked back. It's effectively a better Shiver Mist Buster. You can now take full advantage of any knockback heavy weapons without needing to worry about launching enemies into the next zip code. For about 5 seconds, until the shock starts wearing off. But hey, 5 seconds is usually all you need to take care of most monsters. And all of this is without mentioning the damage. Typically, the damage dealt from shock is abysmal. It's not even worth bringing up, but under the right circumstances, it can add up quickly. Shocked enemies will damage other nearby enemies, and if they're shocked, both of them will take damage. If you get enough monsters grouped together, the shock status can actually deal some decent damage. Number 5. Nitronome. I think it's nice how what's probably one of the most basic bombs in the game is one of the best. Sucks the same can't be said about any other piece of Cobalt equipment. Just about every time I come back to this bomb after gathering footage for one of the other weapons on this list, I'm impressed by the sheer speed of Nitronome. This bomb is fast. It's got good damage, good range, and good knockback. It's just all around an exceptional weapon. Nitronome being basic absolutely does not mean it's underwhelming. The idea of that is an insult towards this bomb. Let me remind you that this is a normal damage weapon. When a normal damage weapon performs this far above the competition, that should be saying something. It has the versatility of Valiance, while also just being a genuinely good AoE weapon. Number 4, Ash of Agni. Oh my god, this bomb is amazing. I'm sure I'm starting to sound like a broken record here, but fire is hands down the most underestimated stats effect in the game. Constant damage over time. Doesn't care about debuffs or defense boosts, meaning this bomb is hitting just as hard, being poisoned inside of a swarm seed. Meanwhile, your Acheron is dealing a fraction of its usual damage. Fire also deals the same damage regardless of your damage bonus, meaning you don't even need Black Cat or Chaos to get the most out of this weapon. Your Ash of Agni is just as effective as the guy over there who spent a car loan getting UVs on their Black Cat cowl. Setting ice cubes on fire will melt the ice on them, disabling their ground spike attack, while also just... Wait, does that say 108 damage per tick? I tried to force a loadout with Deadly Shard Bomb and Ash of Agni to work, and every single time, the fire would end up killing half of everything before Deadly Shard Bomb had a chance to do anything. Look, I've only placed down a few Ash of Agnis, and most of the enemies are already missing like half of their health. That strategy with spamming Voltaic Tempest also works with Ash of Agni. If you keep placing more bombs, ideally overlapping them, multiple fire hazes will reset the fire status. Reapplying fire will burn enemies faster than it normally does, effectively turning Ash of Agni into a DPS bomb. Theoretically, you can push this even further by using Shivermist Buster at the same time, as Freeze resets fire, allowing it to proc even faster, but in practice this doesn't really work. You could use nothing but Ash of Agni in some late game missions, and your loadout would still be optimal. That is how strong this stats effect is. Ash of Agni is busted in literally every level as long as it isn't fire themed. After a lot of debating about how I should rank the top 3 bombs, I eventually decided to just rank them based on how much I personally use them. You may as well consider all 3 of the following weapons as the number 1 spot, because they're each the best weapons in the game at 3 completely different things. Number 3, Electron Vortex. Yep, here it is. It's the bomb, the only one that like 90% of the player base uses. I don't even think I need to write a paragraph for this one. But for those who don't know, Electron Vortex is the best Vortex bomb in the game. This is purely because of the shock status. One of the main downsides to Vortex bombs is that when they explode, it launches enemies away from where the bomb was placed. The shock status, if it procs, will prevent that from happening, keeping monsters grouped up after it explodes. I don't think I need to explain why that's a good thing. Number 2, Dark Retribution. This is what happens when you give high single target DPS to a weapon class that specializes in AoE. I'm surprised this weapon even exists. If you stack enough of these together, the DPS can genuinely rival autoguns. That sentence alone is absurd. Dark Retribution tears through health bars, individually and in groups. This bomb can compete against most single target and AoE weapons. There are 2 main downsides to this weapon. One is that it takes a second to start dealing damage. You have to charge up the bomb, place it down, and wait for it to detonate. And compared to other weapons, that takes a while. But if you can keep your target still for long enough, or if they can't move to begin with, the damage adds up quickly. The other main downside is that Dark Retribution isn't super effective against mobile targets. For the most part, this issue can be solved by just staying in the circle of damage, but sometimes your foes will just start running away from you. And as you can imagine, Dark Retribution isn't very good at chasing down enemies. At a first glance, DR might not seem too impressive. It has relatively low damage numbers compared to most bombs, and the below average range can be a hard selling point. For those who enjoy seeing big numbers, DR might be a little off-putting, but for those who enjoy playing the game, Dark Retribution should be one of your first options. Being able to continuously deal this much damage to a whole group of enemies without even needing to worry about aiming is crazy good. You can place a few down and just walk away. Dark Retribution will finish the job and you don't even need to be there. Number 1, Darkbriar Barrage. Darkbriar Barrage is the king of AoE. I kid you not, some of the things you're able to do with this bomb are outright criminal. Having no knockback on a weapon like this is overpowered. You have so much more control over a group without needing to play around the randomness and inconsistencies of other bombs. You're able to continuously damage a mob without pushing them out of the radius of your bombs. Darkbriar Barrage is also able to stagger enemies, allowing you to just straight up stunlock most enemies in the game. Long ago, I used to struggle in hard device a lot. I tried various different loadouts and different strategies, and even then, it was still pretty challenging and it took way too long to clear some rooms. And then I tried Darkbriar. It's just perfect there. Despite only having 2 weapons, I had to readjust my loadouts around using Darkbriar Barrage, because it's just too good to not use. Being able to deal high damage while constantly staggering enemies are 2 of the best qualities you can have on an AoE weapon. These are gremlins. Their piercing damage doesn't even matter. This is the perfect bomb. It won't compare to the DPS of Dark Retribution or the utility of Electron Vortex, but when it comes down to having a weapon that can take down a large group of enemies, Darkbriar Barrage is hands down the most consistent and reliable weapon to get the job done. It's fast, it hits like a truck, it has slightly more range than blast bombs, you can clear entire packs of wolvers without even needing to look at your screen. As long as you're not against slimes or constructs, there simply isn't a better AoE weapon. Nope.
Oh, no, you were right. Holy shit.